Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're all doing really well out there today. Over the past couple of weeks, I've had several people reach out to me either during live streams or in comments on other videos asking me to take a look at Dockhand. And now that it's been a couple of weeks and I've had some time to dig into it a little bit, I want to talk about it in today's video and kind of share my thoughts and experience along the way. So to jump into this, what we're going to do first is actually take a look at the Dockhand website. We'll kind of skim through that a little bit. Tom Lawrence recently did a video on Dockhand as well. So if I miss something or misstate something, probably just go check out his video because he covers everything really, really well there. I'll try to remember to have that linked in the video description as well. Once we've taken a quick look at their website, then we'll jump into my installation, kind of what I've got going on, some things I plan to change. And along the way, we'll talk about both installation of Dockhand, the Docker management system, as well as Hawser, which is the remote agent that we would use to connect to other Docker servers and manage them from a single dashboard. So I think with that little intro out of the way, let's jump over to my desktop and take a look at the Dockhand website. Actually, before we jump into that, I want to make a couple of quick disclaimers. One, this is Docker oriented. So if Docker is not your thing, that's cool. There's other content out there that you can check out. Another thing is that I'm not the developer or any way affiliated with Dockhand. So if you run into technical issues or have technical questions, it's probably better to reach out to the Dockhand team via their supported methods, whether that's GitHub or social media, whatever. They will have a better opportunity or better chance of answering your question correctly than I may, just again, because I'm still fairly new to Dockhand. And the third thing is that I'm not trying to convince you to switch away from what you're currently doing. This is a Docker management solution, sort of like Portainer or Dockage. If you're using something that works for you, that's awesome. If you want to check this out, that's great as well. But I'm not trying to do anything here to convince you that you should switch, you should abandon your way of doing things. That's never my intent here. I just like to show people what their options are for different applications or different management solutions. So I wanted to get those disclaimers out of the way before we go any further into this video. So now let's jump over to my desktop here. And this is Dockhand Pro. Like it says here, modern Docker management for everyone, a powerful, intuitive Docker platform, free for home labs, ready for enterprise. We think you'll like it here. And of course, we can see they've got home labs, small business, and enterprise, and those kind of toggle different solutions or different information below. We're just going to be doing the home lab stuff with this. What I love about it is it uses SQLite by default, but it can run on a Raspberry Pi. There's zero telemetry, so while you're using Dockhand, it's not phoning home. Everything stays on your machine. It's not a SaaS platform. Again, there's no telemetry here. So yeah, you can self-host everything without the complexity. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is that it does say SQLite no database setup here, but if you'd like to use a Postgres database, there's information on how you can do that as well. And I can say that I've currently got this set up using a SQLite system, a SQLite database, and I will probably reinstall and reconfigure this on my setup using the Postgres option at some point here in the near future. But I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. You don't have to use the SQLite. You can, if you want to, use a Postgres setup. So let's come back over to here, screenshots, see what's included, up and running in 30 seconds. One command, no config files, no setup wizard, no 47-page README. Now that said, their documentation here is a lot. There's a lot of really good information in their documentation. So if at any point you ever feel like you're stuck or you're not sure, definitely check out their documentation here. Again, I'll have everything linked in the video description. So let's come back over to here. This is just the standard Docker run command that you can use. Docker run -d, just meaning keep it or detach it from the terminal, so you don't have to keep your terminal up and running to keep this up and running. We're going to name the container Dockhand. We've got a restart policy unless stopped. Runs on port 3000. However, if you need to change that, just change the first half of that 3000. Don't change the colon or anything after it. Next, we've got a couple of volumes. The first volume is to connect to the Docker socket. This is how Dockhand is able to manipulate other Docker containers. So that's why that's there. And then we've got a volume here for the Dockhand. This is going to be the database or where all of the information for Dockhand is stored. Now, if you have seen Tom Lawrence's video on this, he decided to go with a mapped volume instead, and he said that worked just fine. So you can either use a mapped volume like he did, or just the Docker volume like it shows here in the documentation. Either way seems to work pretty well. So that said, once you can run this, you can then go to your server's IP address on port 3000 or whatever you changed it to, and it'll just take you right to the dashboard. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Other Docker or other ways to deploy. This is a Docker Compose. Again, we've got the Postgres option here as well. And then everything you need in one place. Basically, start, stop, restart, remove containers. I could keep going here, but I feel like we're all adults, at least for the most part. If you want to dig through here and read this, I encourage you to do that. Again, links to everything will be in the video description. The one thing that I do want to mention down here is that the full source code is available on GitHub, so you can take a look at that if you want. It's currently licensed under BSL 1.1, and then it will convert to Apache 2.0 in 2029. Yeah, so that's kind of the gist here. Of course, we've got some different features for the free small business and enterprise, and they're very transparent about what you get with each of those things. That said, I really feel like for the average home labber, the free version is going to be great. However, there are other options that you can get here for SMB and enterprise if you want to go that route. Again, like we talked about, self-hosted only, no SaaS, no cloud dependency, no vendor lock-in, zero telemetry, minimal dependencies. They've got vulnerability scanning, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then they're hardened. This image is hardened from scratch. They don't use pre-built base images. Dockhand builds its own OS layer from scratch using Wolfie packages from APCO or APKO. Every package is explicitly declared in our Docker file. Full transparency, zero mystery. So let's go ahead and jump over to my dashboard that I've got set up. I just kind of wanted to run through their homepage real quick. So let's jump back over to my setup. We'll take a look at what I've got going on and kind of talk about the experience that I've had and some of my thoughts about Dockhand as we go. But basically, we've got 4 different servers configured on this. Our local server, which is here. I do really like the dashboard because I can just drag and drop things where I want them. I absolutely love that. So our local server has 6 containers running, no stop, no pause, nothing here restarting. We've got no unhealthy containers, no pending updates, and again, 6 total containers. All of our containers are healthy. Our CPU usage is 2.4%. Memory is at 22.5% roughly. We've got images, volumes. We can see all of this information very, very clearly at a glance across all of the different nodes or remote hosts. Hosts is what I was looking for there. We can see all of that great information here at a quick glance. But if you want more information or less, you can come up here to the top right where we've got this little table, and we can say compact, which is that. It removes some of the information. We can go standard, which is what we were looking at a moment ago. We can go detailed, which gives us even more information that includes recent events, top containers by CPU usage. So we can kind of see all of that information across all of our different hosts here. And then I think there's one more, which is full, which gives us even more detailed information. So there's lots of different options here on what you can show on your main dashboard. From here, you can click on any of these and it will take you right into the containers that are running, in this case, on my 13-foot host, which is running Moretta. It was running 13-foot. Now it runs Moretta. But here we can see all of the different Docker containers that are running Cloudflare Flame, Hawser, Moretta, portainer agent, and Watchtower. Now, what's cool about Dockhand is there's a pretty good opportunity here for me to actually remove portainer, the portainer agent, and Watchtower. So this is portainer, obviously how I normally manage my Docker containers. The portainer agent lets me kind of do a similar thing here with remote management, managing several different hosts from one main dashboard. And then Watchtower, which of course notifies me when there's an update to any of the containers on a different host. So there's a good chance with Dockhand that I could remove these 3 containers, and I love that. But again, from here, you can see the name, you can see which image is being used, its current state, its health, if you have a health check enabled on that particular container. how long it's been up, restarts, CPU memory, net input output, disk input output, the IP address, the ports, the auto update, the stack. And of course, we can stop, pause, restart, view details, browse files, edit, view logs. What do we have over here? Console and delete. So we've got a bunch of different options here that we can manage all of these different containers. And this is actually on a remote host. So I can do all of that from here, and I love that. If at any point I want to switch to a different host, I can come right up here to the top left, and I can search. I can go down here to say local. This is what's running on my main host where I've got this dashboard actually installed. So we've got Dockhand, portainer, portainer agent, semaphore. Like I will be able to wipe out basically everything here because of how I'm probably going to continue to manage things moving forward. But again, we get all of the same information across all of these different dashboards, and each host is only 2 clicks away, just one right there and one right there. And now we're looking at a different host. And I think that's awesome. So very, very easy to jump around to different hosts and take a look as far as what's going on. Again, we've got that's our containers tab right here. So we were on the dashboard. We've looked at containers. If we now look at logs, we can again see the logs of Flame or Tianji or Watchtower or Portainer. Or we can check these and look at logs across multiple containers simultaneously, which I think is interesting if you wanted to go that route. Not something I've ever needed or wanted, but it's there. So you can do single, multi-grouped. You can kind of break that down into looking at these logs however makes the most sense for you. You can also pause, auto scroll, wrap. You can do all kinds of different stuff over here. Next, we've got our shell. And again, you can switch, before we jump into the shell, we can switch to different hosts using the same dropdown for the logs in this case. Same thing, if we go to shell, we can from here select any of the containers that are running on our 13-foot host, or we can switch to local and search for containers on here. And no shell available for the container. Let's do container default, see if that changes anything. Sometimes it does, not always, but sometimes it makes a difference if you change your user to like container default or root, depending on what you're trying to do there. But you've got shell access to the containers that let you have shell access. Next, we've got stacks. So stacks are exactly that. These are, like in this case, Dockhand is just Dockhand. Again, it's only a single container setup for Dockhand to run, whereas something like Semaphore is going to have the Semaphore container as well as the MySQL container. So that is a stack. Those 2 containers are a stack, right? Watchtower, again, just a single container running there. Now, the one thing that I will say about this is very similar to, say, Portainer, Dockage, or something like that, in that if it wasn't deployed from this instance, you're going to have a harder time being able to do things like edit things, right? Because I deployed all of these using a Docker Compose, either in the terminal or in Portainer. So with like Semaphore, if I try to edit anything, I'm not able to because there isn't a Docker Compose here for this. There's ways that you could adopt this or redeploy this very easily, but it would require you basically to redeploy this using the Docker Compose that you used for the original deployment here on Dockhand. And I'm considering whether or not I want to go through all of that trouble, but I probably will at some point. If at any point during this video, or hopefully by the time we get to the end, if you got questions or want a deeper dive into certain elements of Dockhand, let me know in the comment section down below. I'd be happy to take a look at that and maybe make some follow-up content to answer questions or that sort of thing, because it may help me learn or better understand something if I have to figure it out and then explain it. So if you've got questions or comments, or I guess I should say, if you'd like a deeper dive into certain things, let me know. And if we get enough requests, we may make a follow-up video on this to answer any of those questions. So let's go back over to here. We're going to close this, and again, we can edit, we can view the logs, so we can kind of see what's going on there. We can restart, we can stop, we can completely remove the container or bring it down or delete. We can do all of that from here in the stacks area as well. Now, one of the cool things that we can do from here is we can create a new stack here. By default, it's just populated this in here for the Alpine, Nginx Alpine container, just as an example of what a Docker Compose in here might look like. And you can just drop your own Docker Compose files in here if you'd like. Or if you're using a Git solution, whether it's Git or GitHub or the Forgeo, I think is how it's pronounced, you can connect Dockhand to one of those Git repositories, whether it's self-hosted or a SaaS platform like GitHub, right? But from here, we can say Git, or we can do from Git right here. And we can select the repository. We'll take a look at adding repositories a little later in the video. So we're going to select my GitHub repository, and then we're going to have to choose what compose file we want to use here. And I think I've got Vault Warden as an option here. Now, my GitHub or my Git repositories are kind of screwy right now because of how I handle things. So let me get logged into that, and then we'll come back and I'll explain in more detail what I mean. Okay, so we're back here. We're taking a look at my Git instance. And this is, we're not going to open any of my files because there's stuff in there. We're going to take a look at the Docker Compose section here. And we can see that some of these, like cloudflared.yaml, as I was building out each of these, I forgot to add YAML to the end of it. So I've got things like Vault Warden down here doesn't have the YAML extension. As it turns out, you don't need it for what we're doing here, but it's probably best practice to add it to actually get the file extension that you're looking for. Again, I completely skipped that. Again, I'll probably fix it at a later date, just not right now. But basically, what we're going to do is deploy Vault Warden on our system using the Git option. Right, so we just need to make sure that we know that the name of what we're trying to do here is Vault Warden. So we're going to come back over to here to our stacks area, right? So we're on our repository is our Git repository. You can add multiple if you need to. The stack name, this needs to be lowercase for some reason, so I'm just going to do that. So our stack name will be Git-Vault Warden. We've got Vault Warden here. That's the name. Again, that should have a YAML or .yaml at the end. I just didn't, so it's whatever. If you need to add additional an environment file, you can do that. You can add environments over here on the right side of the page if you need to do that. You can enable a scheduled sync, which I think is kind of neat here. The idea is that if let's say your YAML files or your untagged files here update, then you can have it automatically redeploy the YAML file for your container. And I think that's really neat. You can manage this without having to get your hands dirty. You can schedule things to synchronize your files, your Git files, that sort of thing. You can do all of that from right here by enabling a scheduled sync. By default, it does it at like 3 o'clock, but of course, you can change that if you want to. I'm not going to have that turned on right now. Again, we're just doing some testing here. But you can also enable webhooks, and you can click on Deploy Now. I'm not too worried about that. But I want to show you this because I ran into some issues because I've never actually done this before. So we're going to do a very basic setup here. So we've selected our Vault Warden from our Git, and I'm going to click Create. And right here, I'm gonna kind of close some of this up, and then we're going to open this. It says that it's created and that its source is Git versus untracked. My first thought, and I kept repeating this step because I'm a dum-dum sometimes, and I went over here and I clicked play, and it's like, hey, there were no containers found for that. And I did a lot of AI troubleshooting, and I was asking people in Discord, and then I realized, oh yeah, let's just do that. Let's just click the synchronize button like that. Oh, it failed. Well, that's interesting. I think I ran out of storage space on this. So that's my fault. Let's actually switch to a different host. Let's jump over to speed test. Let's do that again. We're going to do from Git. We're going to select that. We're going to change that. We're going to just call it Vault Warden, like so. That's our compose path file. Again, we're going to leave all this the same, but you do have the option to schedule sync, enable webhooks, deploy now, those sorts of things. So we're going to click create here. Hopefully we don't run into that same issue that we had a moment ago. There it goes. So now we have successfully deployed Git Compose, I really should have changed that to be Vault Warden. But what's cool about this, so we're on our speed test server. If I go to containers over here, right there is the one that is up and running. It's been running for 15 seconds. And if I click right there, it opened, but we're not on an HTTPS. So of course it's not going to do its thing. And I appreciate they actually have that error message. That's new. So good on Vault Warden for adding that. Or yeah. So that's how easy it is to deploy a Docker stack, whether it's a single container or multiple containers from your own self-hosted or non-self-hosted Git repositories. I love that that's a feature, and I've been not using that. And I really should have. That's really great. I love it. Next, we've got images, and again, this is going to show me images per host. And from here, you can open this up and you can see kind of what's going on here. We can open, let's see, all of this is just one. Let's open local. Yeah, there we go. So this untag, and I did this on purpose, right? Because this has got 17 images that are currently being unused. You can kind of see right there. What I love about this as well is that you can say, just prune the unused, click confirm, and then it's going to go through and clean up a whole bunch of things. In fact, you can see this counting down from the 17 that it was. It's going to count all the way down until all of the images failed to prune unused images. Well, stuff happens. But see, oh no, it lied. It said it didn't do it, but then it did. So it got ahead of itself. I think we all have that happen every once in a while. But from here, you can look at all of the different images, the tag being used, the ID, the size, when it was created, how many containers are using it. And of course, there's some different actions here. You can view layers, you can run the container. You can scan for vulnerabilities, which I think is great. If we minimize this, we can also do the same thing right over here. We can scan this for vulnerabilities. I already know that if I scan this image for vulnerabilities, it will come back clean. Again, because the developers of Dockhand have done a really good job of building this. So let's come back and take a look. Let's scan a vulnerability here for Vault Warden server. We can click the little shield, and it's going to go through, and it's going to scan the Vault Warden server image that we've got here on the server. Give this a couple of seconds to do what it's going to do. Okay, so here we are, just a couple of moments later. They used both Gripe and Trivy to scan all of this kind of stuff. And we can actually see all of the different vulnerabilities that are in our Vault Warden setup. So and it's got everything labeled for the CVE ID, the severity of the package, the installed version, and the version in which it was fixed. Some of these haven't been fixed yet, it looks like. So kind of take that with a grain of salt. I think it's kind of a cool feature where you can go in and see any potential vulnerabilities that a container that you're trying to deploy might have on your system. You can do those manually, as I showed there, or when you add additional hosts, you can have it automatically scan things on a scheduled basis. And we'll look at that here in a little bit as well. So that's images. We've got volumes. We can see all of the volumes on our different hosts. If we're doing a multi-host setup, we can kind of look through and see what kind of things we've got going on in our volumes. Same for networks. We can see all of the different networks. This is for speed test, but of course we go local. We can kind of easily switch between hosts to look and see what we've got going on for networks as well. Registries, by default, just the Docker Hub is in there, but you can click on Manage Registries here and add additional registries if you want or need to do that for some reason. We've got activity, and this is just kind of everything that's going on your server. And this is, here we can see speed test for the environment or the host, local, Tianji, speed test. These are all the different things that have happened. And as we scroll, it just kind of keeps refreshing until we get to the end of our activities listed here. We've got schedules, container event cleanup, schedule execution cleanup, and volume helper cleanup. These are kind of the system default scheduled tasks. We can hide those if we want or need to. I'm not honestly entirely sure what's going on here because I don't see a way to add this. There may be other ways to do that. It's maybe not showing here. But then when we get into the settings, we've got a whole list of things across the top of this page that we're going to go through as expeditiously as we can. So our general appearance, show stopped containers, high availability, or highlight available updates on time format, date format, light mode, dark mode. You can change your fonts, all that kind of stuff is there. Vulnerability scanners, again, gripe and Trivy, system jobs, activity event, collection mode, streamer poll, all kinds of different things that we can change here. Our default time zone, you can actually set time zones for your different hosts. So if you're managing a host that is, say, in a different time zone, you can set that host to that time zone so that your times line up better when you're doing things, and it makes things more consistent. A confirmation on or off, log files, all of that is there on the general tab. When we get into environments, here we can see the 4 different environments that we've got. The name, the connection, labels, time zone, features. This is vulnerability is enabled, or vulnerability scanning is enabled, activity collections are enabled, and then metrics collection is enabled on all of my different systems because I want all of that information to be collected so I can see it in one location. Status connected, Docker, what version of Docker are we running? What is our Hawser version? So we can see that a couple of these are behind the Tianji one. They're different numbers. So maybe there are some updates available. We can test our connection. We can edit our connection. We can prune our system, or we can delete the environment, all from this area right here. We can click add an environment. We can click test all. Or we can click refresh up here in the top right corner. So just a quick little way to take a look at your environments and add more as you need to. Again, we've got registries. We were just here a moment ago. The Docker Hub is the default, but again, you can add additional registries as you need to. Git, this is my locally hosted GitHub repository that we looked at a moment ago. IP address, the user, and the actual repository that I want it to look at. And we've got the main branch there as well. This does have a sub menu here where we've got our repositories, and we've got credentials. So this would be the credentials that you would use to log in to your Git repository, whether it's username and password or SSH. You can handle that however you like to handle that for your setup. But that's kind of what's going on in repositories. If you've got multiples, maybe you've got one local and one not local, you can add those and have multiple repositories to choose from. Our config sets, I have no idea. Config sets are reusable templates for container configuration. Define common environment variables, labels, ports, and volumes once, and then apply them when creating or editing volumes. So there you go, just kind of a pre-configured thing that you can use for deployment. I don't know that I would use that, but I know there are people who would, so good on them for that. Next, we've got notifications. I use Godify for all of my notifications. But what's cool about Tianji is that it uses a prize, which means there are a ton of different ways. Let's click here. You can do SMTP or a prize. SMTP is just that, fill in the blanks, and then click test. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, fix it. For a prize, we can click here. And here we can see all of the different prize options that it's showing here for demonstrative purposes. I use Godify, but because my Godify is on a domain, it's actually Godify s://hostname app token. That's kind of how that works. But if you want to use Discord or Slack, Telegram, Notify, Pushover, or JSONs, that's new to me, you can do however you want to do there. And I've been doing some testing and it works really well. So that's cool. I'm going to click cancel there. So you can have different notification channels if you need to for different ways to get contacted if you need to be contacted. And we'll talk about how to set those different notifications as well here in a moment. For authentication, again, I don't have authentication turned on, but it is really one of the first things you should do is you should create a user, whether that's local users, you're using SSO or OIDC. These are on the free tier. If you get into the paid tier for SMB or enterprise, you can use LDAP, Active Directory, and roles. But again, you should turn this on, create a user, and then it will reroute you to log back in. Or it won't. That was what it was. Is it won't reroute you to log in. Things just won't look right until you refresh and log in. Tom Lawrence covers that in his video as well. And then over here, we've got license. You've got a license name. You can put that in there and your license key. And then there's some about information here as far as like what version you're running. All of that information is down here as well. So that's that's kind of the gist on using Dockhand to manage both a local environment as well as a remote environment. But what I want to do now is actually show you the process of adding a remote environment so that you can see some of the additional features that are available for like security and notifications and that sort of thing on an environment or a host by host basis. So we're going to come back over to my Proxmox my Proxmox instance over here. I'm going to let's see, what's something tell you what, let's add link stack. So there's a couple of steps that we need to go through to add the host. The first thing we need to do is come over to here and we need to look for Hawser. Hawser connecting installation. Here we go. There it is. Here is our Docker run command. Again, you can do this with edge mode if you've got a remote host that you want to connect to. You can use a systemd service, that sort of thing. Again, we're just going to deploy this in a very basic way here. But what we need to do is copy this. And what you'll see here is there's an option right here for a secret token. This is going to be basically the password that authenticates the Hawser agent with Dockhand so that they can actually communicate with each other. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to open a new notepad here. I'm going to paste this in, and then we're going to change this token right here to something like that. It's good enough for me. So we'll want to make sure that we keep this available to us because we're going to need it here in a moment. So I'm going to copy this with our new token in it. I'm going to go to proxcube over here, and I'm just going to run this docker run command, making sure that it's got a restart policy in there. That's super important. We're going to go ahead and run that. We'll give this just a second, and hey, look, it's up and running. Let's make sure docker ps Hawser health is starting. That's good. So we're good to go there. What we want to do now is grab the IP address of our remote host. So I'm going to come back to here. I'm going to go to dashboard. I'm going to come over to here. I'm just going to click the plus sign right up here at the top right. And this is going to add an environment. This was, what did we say this was? This was our link stack environment, right? So I'm going to do link stack. Oops, stackle, nope, stack. This time we're going to use, you've got different ways that you can do this. I'm going to use the Hawser method again, because it's the standardized way to handle this. The agent host, I'm actually going to put the token in down here so I don't forget to do that. Our host is going to be this IP address right here, right? And then our agent port, we're going to leave that alone. That's fine. We don't need to do any of this, but our public IP, we want to make sure that actually, it autofilled. That's cool. I didn't realize that. Click test. Nope. So it didn't like, did I copy? Oh, sure enough. Let's try that again. I sure screwed that up. I think I put the IP address in there. Test. Okay. Docker connected 5 containers. Great. We're going to click add. Right there is our link stack instance. In fact, I skipped over a bunch of stuff there. I apologize. That was just making sure we could connect. We are connected. We're good. Let's take a look at some of the other tabs here real quick. So under updates, we can enable scheduled update checking, automatically check for container updates on a schedule. If you want to turn that on and have it check every day at 4 o'clock, you can do that. Or you can switch it to whenever you want it to do that. You can also from here turn on automatically update containers. I don't advise that. Don't do that. That's a bad idea unless you're pinning versions of the containers that you're trying to deploy or that you are deploying rather. And then again, like I said, you can set the time zone for each individual remote host, or in this case, environment. So maybe this was a remote, like way away. You can change the time zone for this specific host or environment. From here, activity, do you want to collect container activity, system metrics, and value changes? Absolutely, we want all of that on there. For security, we can do this. I advise turning security on. You've got the option for gripe, Trivy, or both. I think both is good. So we're just going to go ahead and pull both of those, and we're going to do that. Make sure that we've got Trivy and gripe installed and ready to go to do these security checks. We've also got notifications here. And if you want to get notified when different things happen, we're just going to click right there. And now we've got notifications turned on using Godify, 27 different events that it's going to look for across 7 or 6 different categories. So container events, including containers starting or stopping, restarting, exiting, unhealthy, update succeeded, update failed, blocked, detected, get sync succeeded, failed, or skipped, stack events started, stopped, deployed, or failed, critical vulnerabilities, high vulnerabilities, or any vulnerabilities found, system events for image pulled, environment offline, environment online, disk space warnings, and you can toggle each of these however makes the most sense for you. And I love that. So now we can click save. And here we can see that we've got checking for updates turned on here that we don't have on the others. So that's great. I'm going to refresh this. There it goes. I wasn't seeing the Hawser version, and I wanted to make sure I hadn't screwed something up. So that's working. And now at this point, right, we can go to our containers. We can come over here to link stack and we can see all of the containers that are running. That's Dockhand. I think it's amazing. I will probably actually implement this for myself as I kind of work through my day and kind of just have to do it, right? I'm real bad. Like I've got all these big plans and I just got to do it. And sometimes that's hard. But I think I'll actually be using Dockhand. The one thing I do want to mention though, with Dockhand is that it is a fairly new project. This is the one. So this is the this is the GitHub repository for Dockhand. We can see that it's got 1,500 stars. It's got 45 forks. If you'd like to support these guys, you can watch it, you can star it, however you want to handle that. We can kind of see who's participating here. Lots more information in the GitHub repository if you want to take a look at that. But this is a fairly new project. If we look at the commits here, right here, there was one this morning at some point. We can see that 6 hours ago. But as we scroll back to our initial commit, oops, that's not it. That's not quite the initial commit. Here's the initial commit. This was 3 weeks ago. Now, that's not to say that obviously they were working on it behind the scenes before they did their first commit. But this is still a fairly new project in the grand scheme of things when you compare it to something like Portainer that's been around for, say, a decade or more. So there will be probably things that will change, things that will, processes that might change. So be aware of that. Be conscious of the fact that things will likely change as this project matures. But I think it's a great project. I'm really happy that people kept kind of poking me to take a look at it. I haven't actually chatted with the developers at all, but if they happen to see this, I would love to hear from them in the comments section down below. I'd also love to hear from you guys who are viewing this video who aren't the developers. What are your thoughts on this? What additional features would you like to see? They do have a roadmap of features that they're working on for both the free and the paid versions of Dockhand. So definitely check that out. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are on Dockhand in the comment section down below. If you want to support me and what I'm doing here, you can become a channel member, become a patron. There's merch available below this video if you want to check that out. And then you get something back for yourself besides just your name on the screen back here and ad-free access and early access sometimes when that's available. So I think with all of that said, I've kind of got all this out of my system. I want to thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me here today. And I'll talk to you in the next video.